law and context and I do all of the above. I read, mainly because reading tends to make you go fastest, but I watch, right now I'm rewatching a show that I really enjoyed back in the day called Fringe.
Oh yeah.
And it's on Amazon Plus.
Oh, is it? Called what? Fringe.
I watch it on my iPad.
For some reason it comes back as a serial killer or something like that.
No, it's just about strange happenings and alternate worlds, or parallel worlds.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's
Okay.
entertaining and a very eccentric scientist, and they solve mysteries of these macabre.
I'm watching, my wife and I are watching a series right now on TV, and one of the pleasant surprises about it is how accurate it is in the courtroom scenes. It's called Lincoln Lawyer.
The Lincoln Lawyer? Yeah, McConnell.
Yeah. It's surprisingly good. And they did a jury selection. When's the last time you watched a courtroom drama where they showed the jury selection?
Never.
Well, they did. They showed the jury selection, and I said to my wife, yeah, that's almost exactly how it works.
That used to be true of Law and Order when it first came out.
Yeah.
They had a lot of good law.
And then they drifted, yeah.
Now they get to more of the sensational.
I also, my reading may be more serious than my watching. My watching is typically pretty nonsensical, but, I've been reading a lot.
Yeah, when I was watching Law and Order when it first came out, I was in the habeas corpus division. So I was seeing all the cases I was solving.
Yeah. Since the news has become part of the entertainment industry, it's harder to watch the news.
It's harder to get quality value time out of shouting heads and...
Back in the Concrete era,
All right.
the networks ran their news services at a loss, but
and I have
They had serious
hundreds,
trouble.
but we were running.
First thing we'll do is the roll call. Commissioner McConnell.
here.
Commissioner Primo.
Here.
Commissioner Cordill is not currently present. Commissioner Shrewsbury.
Present.
Commissioner Richards. Here. Commissioner Snyder.
Here.
Commissioner Tresize. Present. And Commissioner Bloomer, the chair, is present. All right. Next, we have public remarks. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the commission? The record should reflect that there are no responses to that. So we will move on to item 4, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Tresize, a second. Seconded by Commissioner Richards. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? No opposition. The agenda for today is approved. Now we have item number 5, approval of the minutes from the May 9 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve that, or any discussion on that?
I'll move to approve.
Move to approve the minutes of the May 9 meeting by Commissioner Tresize. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Commissioner Shrewsbury. Any discussion? Any amendments, suggestions to the minutes?
One very minor thing, just to prove that I read them. On item E, on page 4 of the minutes, page 6 of the PDF, if the Planning Commission has plans, see the third paragraph. Planning Commission has plans to write a letter to Bath Township. They should complement the wetland ordinance to protect priority wetlands in the context of climate change, which is reflected in the subsequent letter. So, not super important, just a thing.
Just a note on that point for the other commissioners. I signed that letter. I wondered whether it would be more appropriate to bring it back and have everybody review it before I signed it, but I was told that there was a deadline, so I went ahead and signed it before this meeting. So, okay. All right then. All in favor of approving the minutes from the May 9 meeting, say aye, please.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? None. The minutes are approved from the May 9 meeting. Now we are on item number 6, communications, the Bath Township Master Plan Response Letter. That is a part of the package. As I explained, I signed it before having the rest of you have a chance to see that because there was a deadline for its submission. So let's move on to item number 7, public hearing on special use permit 22-061, Meridian Township Message Sign Ordinance.
Thank you. I am in front of you this evening both as applicant and reviewer, giving Director Massey the evening off to be with her kids tonight. So the request in front of you this evening is part of what has been a long process at the township to upgrade both our brands and our signage throughout the township. This is the beginning of the next stage of the process, if you will. Communications staff and various other staff have been working on this for, I believe, 7 years is the last number I heard. They have finalized out the concept for the first round of signage, and that is what is in front of you this evening, because under our current sign ordinance, any changing message sign comes to the Planning Commission for a special use permit review. So that is what is under review this evening, is 2 changeable message signs. One located at the Meridian Township Farmers Market, right here, roughly between the 2 sidewalks that go out to Central Park. They sort of tucked it in there between all the utilities and sidewalks. And the second will go at the Marsh Road entrance to the municipal complex and the police department. These signs will replace all the existing signage on the property. And the municipal complex has a whole sign package that goes with it, directional wayfinding signs to direct people to which building they're going to, where the parking is, etc. But as I mentioned, the request in front of you this evening is for the change of message signs only. The 2 signs, the municipal building sign, approximately 92 square feet in total. If you put a big box around everything like we do with our signage, about 20 square feet of that sign is a change of message. The sign for Marketplace is about 82 square feet. The difference being the Marketplace on the green sign does not indicate the Namoka Village at that location. That's essentially the addition to the township municipal property sign. In both cases, though, the changing message sign, 20 square feet, approximately 20 to 25 square feet, or approximately 20 square feet of the overall size of the sign. So the 2 properties, although this application is together, they are zoned differently, which is kind of unique. The township municipal hall site is zoned RAAA, residential, as are the majority of the township properties, as we found. That is a somewhat consistent policy that we've had over the years. Most of the township properties are zoned residential. The farm marketplace on the green site is zone C3 because it's part of the mall site. Under the current ordinance, the change of message signs are only permitted on commercial properties. So you'll note one of the conditions of approval staff has recommended is that the ordinance ultimately be amended to allow for the sign at the municipal complex. As part of the sign ordinance update, staff is recommending, and the sign ordinance subcommittee has at least initially granted a head nod towards what will become a waiver of all ordinance requirements for municipal signage. Because I think what you're seeing, especially on a sign like this, is that, this isn't a traditional sort of advertising sign. There's a lot that the township is trying to have happen in this specific area. We're trying to identify that it is a township building or property. We're trying to identify what the actual township property is. We also, in this case, have the Historical Village edition. So instead of installing a second sign, we're keeping it on one side. And the change of message sign is intended to replace all the banners and flags and things that you see for the individual special events. Announcing the farmer's market this weekend, announcing Celebrate Meridian coming up, announcing the Juneteenth celebration, things like that. We have no problem limiting the change of message to one a day. I've currently written it up as twice a day, just in case something needed to change on midday. But the Assistant Township Manager Optimer has no concern limiting it to one change a day if that's the desire of the Planning Commission. I would also point out just a couple of timing questions. Not out to bid yet. The documents are almost done to go out to bid. Hope is to have install late summer, early fall on this first piece of the package. The signs on these properties and the Central Park South sign, which will be similar in nature without the electronic message sign. So that is what's in front of you this evening for public hearing. Happy to answer any questions as the applicant or as the staff liaison on this project.
As I understand it, these will not be flashing messages.
Absolutely not. And that's, one of the conditions of the approval would be that neither sign shall flash, travel, or move in any way. It is a static message that is able to be changed.
I can't remember if you addressed this before, but is there any provision for emergency messaging on that board?
The message can always be changed, yes. So if there was an emergency message that needed to go out, yes, there will be a provision in place to allow whoever. There'll obviously be an internal process to decide what goes on it. But it's certainly, if something needed to go out immediately, it wouldn't be hard to change, is my understanding.
I guess I'm thinking of weather alerts and things that are going to change quite frequently, and if we are too strict in how often it can be changed. I know you don't, on a daily basis, want it changing every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But some kind of provision that would allow for it, a more dynamic use when there's information to be, the tornado's coming, it's here, it's, get out of your car, stop. We don't care about the farmer's market at the moment.
Exactly. I think in circumstances like that, if I'm being completely blunt, we're going to do what we have to do to get the message out. If there's a tornado warning, we're going to put the message on the sign if we feel as though that is the appropriate thing to do. What we're trying to do is really stay consistent with other changing message signs and say, look, we'll only change it twice a day in normal circumstances. Obviously, in terms of emergency, township's doing what we have to do to keep people safe.
And is there an existing changing message sign that people could use as a kind of a understanding of roughly what it would look like? Doesn't Culver's have a changing?
So there's two, there might be three. Give me a second. Culver's has one, and the Walgreens has one. And
The high school does.
the high school, thank you. I thought there was a third one, and I think it's the high school. So this one, these are full LED screens. So theoretically, you can put a full picture on it if you wanted. Our intention for readability is to use it like this, because this is how the message is more readable. Now, obviously, the farmer's market message is going to be branded to the farmer's market, so it'll probably be a different color, but it's largely going to be text-based message is what we're shooting for here.
So it's not like the sign in front of the Breslin that,
It will not be
Just to
like the
show you
sign in front of the
active,
Breslin that
yeah.
you can see almost to my neighborhood back when I lived over there.
Any other questions? Why is it necessary to put a limit to changes in at all? Why not just leave it to the rational discretion of the township officials?
And it's certainly up to the planning commission's discretion to make that choice. We are simply trying to stay consistent with previous change of message signs that have been recommended for approval in the township.
Commissioner Trusais?
If it comes back to us at some point to exclude or to have all of the Meridian Township signs and messages excluded from the restrictions of the zoning laws, then this is moot.
That is an excellent question. However, the special land use will still be in place for this sign so that the conditions would still technically be in place.
Okay.
Unless the sign was substantially modified, right? And the special land use no longer applies. But we're being open and upfront here that we are committed to following the rules as they currently exist.
Okay.
Commissioner Primo, did you have a question?
So I guess I'm wondering about the message sign only changing up to twice a day. For me, I guess the question would be, look, what is the objective of the electronic message board? Because it sounds like if it's only able to change twice a day, it's going to be quite static. So I guess I'm thinking kind of more backwards design, like what is it that we're trying to communicate? And is that twice a day change sufficient to get across whatever it is we're trying to communicate?
Yeah, so the goal of the sign is largely for special events or special messages. So the ability to let us change it even once a day still gets out that, okay, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of a week, I can put up that the farmer's market's on Saturday. On Saturday, maybe the beautification committee has an event on Sunday, so we can put that message up on Saturday. Then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Sunday, Monday, it becomes township board meeting on Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Things like that, so that we don't have to go out and put up a new banner or change the individual letters. So it's a static changing message. We need to have multiple messages on the sign, but they can be there for multiple days at a time.
Right, and I guess, I hope I didn't communicate that incorrectly. The point I'm trying to make is if it's an electronic message board, it feels to me like we maybe wouldn't want to limit to 2, because I would assume there are gonna be times when we have a lot going on in the township. So that's, I guess, I think I'm kind of on the same page as you.
And I see where you're coming from. We were simply trying to be as conservative as possible in approaching the planning commission here. If the planning commission thinks that the township needs a little more flexibility, we're happy to strike that condition when we bring this back to you for decision.
I have one concern about that, and I don't have any problem with the township having discretion, because I think they'll be responsible. But to say that a changing sign is not a distraction is a little bit of a misnomer, because if I'm driving and I'm trying to read a sign and suddenly it changes and I'm driving and I'm trying to read the change, I'm distracted. So for that reason, I think multiple changes may not be a great idea, okay? Because the signs, I like the idea of the signs because it goes back to a lot of what I've been saying recently about our need to communicate more and better. I think that helps the process. On the other hand, I think that we need to be responsible about the way we do that, and to say that a sign like that is not a distraction is not entirely, in my mind, accurate. There is, the minute as a driver I turn to read that sign, I'm distracted.
Commissioner Trusais?
Yeah, I think starting out at up to twice a day is a reasonable place and consistent with our other zoning laws. If it becomes used for different purposes, I would think that it could come back to be amended as necessary. I get the impression this is not it's not to give immediate warnings to anybody about that thing. This is what's coming up in the township that you may be interested in. It will be Saturday. You don't need to change that 3 times, and I would hate to have a long list of things that change every 20 seconds with another list of, that is extremely distracting. So a status or a stationary static sign that can be changed as necessary up to twice a day, I think is a decent way to go with
And I
this.
think we can add the caveat that says that the exception is in case of emergency. You know, communication in case of emergency, the sign may change more than twice.
What I was
You know.
envisioning is the township offices are temporarily closed due to illness.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Don't drive in the driveway.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we can make allowances for what we think are obvious reasons without throwing the rule out, in my opinion.
Well, I had a very technical suggestion on the resolution to approve if we were interested in that, but if you had another substantive issue, that's...
I was wondering whether we should have a straw vote on that, but go ahead, what is your point?
The 5th condition, I'm not sure that this resolution to approve can mandate the updating of the ordinance. I think it's just the way the sentence is written, but the installation of the sign would be contingent on the updating of the ordinance, I think is what you were going at there.
I can reword that for you, yeah, no problem.
Otherwise, I'm in favor of the...
Should we do a straw vote and then send it back to them for revision?
Yeah.
All right. So then I will call for a vote, a straw vote. Commissioners, first of all, the vote is whether or not you would approve the concept subject to minor revisions by staff. Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrewsbury?
Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Commissioner Tresize?
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes, presuming we can reach consensus on the sort of timing issue and...
Okay. And Commissioner Primo?
Yes.
And the chair also supports.
We will bring you guys a couple options on the timing issue, and we'll be ready for the next meeting.
Very good.
And
Thank-
I would strongly recommend that we do add language that says preserving the 2 changes, but that says something in discretion in case of emergencies, whatever.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't go quite as far as emergencies, I'd say exceptional circumstances.
Well,
Because if it's a
Yeah.
question of, you know, the farmer's market's not going to open Saturday, it's hardly an emergency, but you do want to post it.
Yeah,
Understood.
all right. I think that closes item number 7. We'll move on to item number 8, which is unfinished business. The first use of that, the first item there, item 8A, is the Hazlet Village issue.
Good evening. You previously held a public hearing on this application on April 25th. We received updated materials and have updated everything accordingly. The proposal now previously had 302 residential units. It's 290 residential units now. The non-residential space of 21,750 square feet has remained the same. You see the breakout there. Just to move forward very quickly and go through this, the biggest issue that we had previously had was the waivers and the amenities, how they didn't balance. This has been fixed. This project requires 10 amenities, and 10 amenities are provided as you see in the staff report. The other big issue that we had was the traffic generation proposal or analysis. It didn't match the site plan that we had. That's been fixed. And indeed, by our ordinance, we still do not require a traffic study, although it is my understanding that the road department has sent us an email saying they'd like some further analysis. Other than that, the architectural design is verified. They've provided their lead project checklist score sheet. That was an issue we previously had. We need something that showed how they were complying with architectural design elements. And while they're not going for lead certification, they are using that checklist, and that is provided for your review. Parking calculation has been fixed and is accurate, and the waiver has actually gone down now to 352 spaces because of the lower number of residential units. And the drive-through that they're proposing on the existing building on Hewlett Road, that meets all requirements as well and can be approved. It's by our MUPD ordinance is approved as part of this whole process. So the applicant has addressed the concerns that were brought up at the April 25th meeting. Staff is satisfied with the proposed waiver requests and the proposed amenities, and recommends the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Township Board for the MUPD application. We have attached a resolution to that end. I can answer questions, or the applicant is very well represented here tonight.
I might just say that commend the applicant for being responsive to the concerns. I think they obviously heard the issues, and I think they made a substantial effort to address them, and that I appreciate.
Commissioner Trezise.
I had a couple of things. One has to do with the parking. That is a rather significant down count of the parking spaces that would normally be required. And I understand that 2 parking places per dwelling unit probably is overkill, but this takes it down to less than 2 per unit, and also reserves a certain amount of parking for the public buildings. And assuming that the trailhead is transferred to the township, there'll be a few parking spots there that will be reserved, I assume. I don't know if the charging stations are considered parking spots, but as they get used, I don't think that's a legitimate count, but it just seems like that's a significant reduction in parking. This place is real exciting to see it's going up, but it is not a situation where most of the residents will be able to survive without a vehicle of some sort. There isn't a walkable grocery store, at least not in January, February, and March. CATA is not robust enough to take care of all the needs. So I'm just curious about that size waiver in this situation, and it makes a very congested, I don't see any place to add parking, that's my other problem, but that seems like a significant challenge. With Pine Village, we did a variance from roughly 260 parking spots down to 105, so there is no overflow area that is useful for this development should the parking become problematic. And I'm just wondering if your comfort level in going this length of reduction.
We're presenting the request, and the way the ordinance says the Planning Commission and ultimately the township has the ability to waive parking spaces if they provide an amenity. If it's up to you to determine if they're waiving too many parking spaces. I see your point.
Yeah, well,
I understand, but I do understand what you're saying, and
yeah, in your discussion of this when it came to us, you indicated that you didn't have a significant problem with that size waiver.
what I said was that I was pointing out that there was an inconsistency between the calculation as required by the parking calculation that I was coming up with versus the one that they were providing in the site plan.
I understand that, but you also...
I was, and if I conveyed that I was tacitly saying this is, I wasn't bringing that up as an issue per se, and I apologize. I'm not taking a side in that. I'm only presenting what they're asking.
Okay.
Well, perhaps we can hear from a representative of the project. I tend to agree that there is an issue here because it is rental, it's not purchase, which means you're almost certainly going to be dealing with a younger population, more mobile. And I agree with the statement that you can't exist very well around there without a car. So do you think that if you have full rental, that you will have enough parking spaces?
Good evening, Mike Corby from Integrated Architecture. I'll maybe address that specifically and then maybe highlight a few things too. But typically, we're looking to have 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, and that's kind of tested out on other projects. So we're at almost at 1.7. We're at 1.68 or something like that, close to that 1.67. So as we look at it, we feel very comfortable with the amount of parking that we're providing based on our experience with the other developments in similar nature. So yeah, I think we were happy to hear that you do have an ability to get a waiver, because the trend right now actually is heading in the other direction where fewer vehicles are going to be needed in the future. So at this point, we're very comfortable with the counts.
Commissioner Richards?
Yeah. Do you have, or would it be possible to have a contingency plan, or at least do you have an idea that if you needed more space, where you would put them on the site, or are you looking at it needing more more land than you have under your control at this point?
We don't have a deferred area that we can add parking, but I think what we did for reasons of just kind of promoting a more walkable lane is we've got a lot of parallel parking. If obviously parking is a big issue if it doesn't work, and again, we're basing it on things that we feel can work, but if for some reason we're having issues, what we could do is look at converting the parallel parking to maybe angled parking so we can get more density of parking in there. So I think we do have some outlets like that. We obviously don't believe we'll ever need them, and we're not planning them as a deferred situation, but we could if we had to, I suppose.
Well, I never thought that you needed 800 and some parking spots for this unit, but, and the other question I had to do with your commercial building, H1 on your plans. Right now, looking at your build-out schedule, it's not listed. So when did you have intent to put in, what phase of building did you have that going in?
That was brought up in the previous meeting. I think I addressed it as best I could. And the applicants, Chad and Mike, are here, as well as Greg from KEBS. They're going to be marketing Building H immediately. It's kind of the old bank site that's going to be torn down. So it was tough to put it into a phasing diagram, because if it's a specific user, we're not going to build, we prefer not to build a spec building and then have somebody come in there that wants a specific design on that site. It's a very prominent part of our project. So I guess the best way we could answer it was the way we did, and kind of the response was, it's going to be marketed from day one, and we hope that it's part of the initial phase. But if we want to make sure we get the right user in there too. So I think at some point, it may get to a point where we're doing more of a spec multi-tenant retail or restaurant. But I think the initial thought is to market it as a site that a single user could use. And I think we've talked to Amber and others at the township, and they've kind of directed us in some ways of potential single users for that corner. So unfortunately, that's the best way we can answer it. It's going to be marketed immediately.
And I understand that, but
Yeah.
I would hate to get to the end of the 6-year build-out, and if you have no tenant, you decide not to build the building. That is the significant portion of the multiple use that this is supposed to have. So I would ask that you put it somewhere in there, even if it's at the end, at phase
Correct.
5 or earlier.
Yep.
Just so that it's listed in there and it's going to be built at some point.
We can do that. I think that our intent is that once, I think one of the gentlemen that was here in the last meeting that spoke said it's been difficult to get tenants on there. I think with this vision, I think it will be much easier for us to market it to viable users. So our hope is that somebody sees it and immediately wants to put something there, but we can put it in as maybe no later than our last phase, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that.
Sure.
Just to make sure that it's in the construction plans or the site plans that are approved.
Sure.
As we go
Well,
forward.
we're also dealing with reality that the whole landscape of retail is changing rapidly. And so the kinds of tenants you get are not the kinds of tenants you used to get. It's because more and more and more and more shopping is done online. And that does create a different kind of challenge, I think, when you're putting up buildings for those kinds of purposes. So I think we need to understand some flexibility.
Correct. I think even Amber made a mention that there's another, I won't be specific about who the user is, but there's another user in the area that's looking to potentially move. And I think, again, if they're part of a more freshly developed site, that might be more appealing to them than where they're at right now.
Commissioner McConnell, you had?
I think Commissioner Snyder was before me.
Well, I had a question about the previous topic of the parking.
That's where I'm headed to, so you go first.
Oh, okay. I guess I just wanted to echo the concerns. I had the same concerns as I was looking at this. You said that in your other developments that you typically allot like 1.5 cars per unit. Are those developments like mixed use, retail and residential? Are they primarily residential?
Primarily residential. So they'd be more comparable than a mixed use. I mean, there is going to be some overlap. Obviously, we've got about 17,000 square feet of retail space, roughly, maybe a little bit more than that. And then there'll be some overlapped uses. And a lot of the parking that we have kind of on the Marsh Road side is set up so that there's a little bit more density of parking there so that it could be swing parking. But again, I think we don't want there to not be enough parking. So if for some reason there isn't, we would maybe have to convert some of the parallel parking to and if you want us to identify those areas, that would be easy for us to do, and that we could identify how many more parking spaces might be available. But we prefer to have a more intimate relationship between those lanes. And you've been through the other developments in the area where you're kind of driving through parking lots. We don't want to have that, so we've kind of pocketed the parking kind of behind the buildings, and we've kind of got more of a typical street parking where we can. But as you can see by where the pickleball courts are and things like that, we went to 90-degree parking off there just to get a little bit more density in those areas. So we did add some parking in the area where the trail head is, so that we've got some parking available. And I think we will sign some of that to be available to users during certain hours.
Are you meaning the trail head? Like the parking will only be available to people who are using the dog park?
Not overnight for them, but for the people that would be using the trailhead. So we don't want people to park there overnight unless they're a resident.
And I was wondering if you included in your calculation the potential food truck staging area. Are those parking spaces included in the parking count or not?
They are included in the parking count. Obviously, the hours of that operation would be controlled so that when we take those spaces out of commission, it wouldn't be for extended periods of time.
And it looks, I mean, a cursory glance, like maybe 30 spaces there, roughly? I don't expect you to count them, but...
Right. Yeah, probably.
Okay.
So if I understand that right, then a certain number of the spaces in the development would be controlled. In other words, they effectively rented to the residents.
Right.
Permit for the parking.
Correct.
And in the event that demand for those is high, then that parking rate will rise, and that will incentivize people to choose other modes of transportation, whether it's a bus or a bike or a walk or a lift or whatever it might be. So I think that's kind of where we're going. And just for us as a planning commission, as a township, the fact that we have several applicants now coming to us and saying we don't want that much parking tells us that we're on the right track with relooking at our parking requirements.
Yeah.
A similar thing, if I could, struck me about the setbacks in this case. It seems like those are big reductions in setbacks from the roads. And if we're trying to get a walkable community with commercial up at the road, right, we got to be less strict about how far we are from the center line. So that's kind of internally for us, if this is what we're trying to drive, let's set the rules right so we're not requiring waivers on those things. And on the walkability, it looks, if I'm reading it right, that there is some new crosswalk to the community center along Hewlett Road west of where the food trucks would be. So thanks for taking care of that. I noticed in the food truck area a mention of hookups, and I was curious, is that water, electrical, both, neither?
Probably just electrical.
Okay.
But no like permanent water or sewer or anything like that. It would be
Yeah,
just,
I'm mainly concerned about the electrical. If you don't have that generator sitting there running, it's a much more pleasant experience to visit a food truck, right? So that's great. There's a pathway that was shown on one of the drawings, I think is actually the development next door, that kind of comes down that access road and
here. No, if you could-
below that in the shaded area, oops,
between C3 and C4?
No, it's outside. It's with the Pine Village.
in the Pine Village.
Yes,
It kind
those are
of
the
comes
two.
down, there's a sidewalk on the west side of that sort of drive that ends at the corner, and I don't see any crosswalk connecting it to any place else and it's not your corner, but having some pedestrian connectivity between that Pine Village and this development, it seems like that southern end is kind of a bit of a dead end. Maybe we need to bring that up with the Pine Village folks.
Right. We talked about it with staff. We're fine with making that connection, but they're not showing it from the westward location to our site. So if they do in fact connect it, we'll have a crosswalk there and connect.
Cool. I love the connections to the interurban. The one on the westmost looks like it crosses an awful lot of contour lines on its way down that hill. And I'm thinking it might need to have a slightly different shape so it's not quite so steep, maybe a zigzag or a switchback.
Well, on that side, there's a lot of berming that we're going to be kind of taking down a little bit, so there'll probably be just a small inlet through some berming, but there is behind, or essentially where G1 and G2 are, there's about I don't know, Greg, maybe it's like a 9-foot berm that we're going to be taking down, so we still have some visual blockage, but so you'll actually be kind of going, we'll probably have to clear the berm out there and have that.
Oh, cool. All right. And then the last minor thing was the trailhead at the restrooms. I guess the restrooms are going to have water. There'd be like drinking fountain and for the dogs and all that.
Drinking fountain, restrooms, there'll be a bike, what I call a bike kiosk that'll have different tools that you can use it'll have an air pump, so it'll have things that you can use to just kind of do light maintenance on your bike. And then there'll be benches, it'll be, the dog park itself will be obviously a fenced-in area that somebody can use. And that'll all be available to the general public.
Right. Super. I love all those aspects of the project. The last thing is more philosophical. I'm reading from your letter. Our overall vision is to create a vibrant mixed-use development with an emphasis on desirable quality of life characteristics. These include walkability activities, amenities, quality living units, and a strong sense of community. I'm curious how the project will develop that strong sense of community. I mean, obviously there's a lot of common areas and amenities that people will share. They'll see each other. But is there like an association that's envisioned that would help foster that sense of community within this?
Well, there'll probably be, obviously, some programming that'll go on. I think what we're trying to do is create different areas for you to either socialize or have activities together or just kind of run into each other. So the network of walking, promotes movement, safe movement around, which I think is important. The pickleball courts will be hard surface courts, so the other activities can happen on them. There's an activity park in there too, so just, a lot of different things for you to do to just kind of appeal to whatever your disposition is for that day. The social hub, even though there'll be part of it that is dedicated to the residents, we didn't want the community hub to just be purely resident only. We wanted them to feel like they're kind of connecting into a community social space. So I think we've actually talked to a group that they don't do food trucks, but they do kind of something similar. So we're trying to explore that, but we're keeping it flexible right now. But it will be an event space that you can rent and have different functions there. So the idea is to have it so that there's a strong sense of community within the resident population, but also there are other things that they can do that are coming onto the site, so they don't have to go off-site necessarily. And we're hoping to get a service-oriented user for that corner, whether it's food and beverage or whether it's some sort of retail service. We're hoping it's something that the residents will use, as well as the Pine Village residents. They're looking forward, when we met with them, they were looking forward to having some other commercial amenities that are walkable too.
With the amount of rental space for living, how transient is your experience in terms of the population that live in places like this?
I think the variable is how livable it is. So I think how the social network is developed, how the quality of the product, I think the things that you can do. I think obviously what the developers have learned is the nicer you make it, the more things that you can do, the longer people will stay. So turnover is not something that's not a good thing. So they want people to stay there longer. So yeah, I think it's those ingredients kind of all add up to hopefully better living.
Which impacts then the sense of community, longevity. Yeah.
Have you folks actually done a demographic projection? What kind of person is going to end up living there?
There was a study that they're basing it off of, so yes.
Yeah.
But I'll let
Chad Coster, or the development team, 940 Floral, Grand Rapids, Michigan. We did have a market study done. One of the reasons that we took it down to 290 was because we wanted to have more 2-bedroom units in there rather than more 1-bedrooms. So, I think the answer is younger professionals. I think that there's going to be a good mix with, frankly, older people that are leaving the nest and because their kids have left the nest and probably moving into an easier way of life. So I can't give you a specific answer in terms of, 28 single people, and I mean, it's just, I think we've got to, these guys have been doing this for a long time integrated, and, they have their mix, and they usually hit that pretty well, so.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, looking at your units, you have 289 units, and the parking is based on so many spots per unit, is that correct?
I mean, on average, that's what we do, but yeah, I think you guys do it more on number of bedrooms.
Okay, so I guess that's I guess my point here is I look at the bedroom distribution. If I read this right, you have 143 at 1, you have 125 at 2, so you have to actually, in terms of bedrooms, you have to multiply that by 2, correct? So it's 250, 350, almost 400. So we're looking at like 450 bedrooms. And how many parking spots do you have?
Just under 500, 482,
What is it?
482.
Okay, so it's less than one per bedroom. And so I guess I still have somewhat of an issue about parking, I guess, and I understand that, you want to have a certain amount of parking, but I also know these folks are going to have visitors. We also know that some of the spaces that are, the total spaces here are going to be used for public purposes, pickleball or the trail, that sort of thing. So I'm wondering if we, whether it's our staff or the applicant, could point us to a comparable project that's up, existing, and we can do some research in terms of making sure that the parking, and look at the numbers and get some feedback in terms of whether it's the municipality or what, just to make sure. I guess that's the only part of this project that makes me a little bit nervous, is the parking. And I understand that our parking requirements are old school in terms of numbers, but I think we also want to make sure that there is significant, or there is enough parking, and if there needs to be more, where is it going to go on this site? And I would feel more comfortable if we could do some research, either staff or the applicant, to get a comfort level that the number that are projected here is going to be sufficient for all the uses that are going on. Otherwise, the project, I like the project.
My observation about that, a couple of things. Number one, economically, it's going to be in their best interest to do what they have to do to accommodate their facility. If they find out they don't have enough parking, he's already said they have a contingency plan, which is to go from parallel to. Just in terms of the dollars and cents, I imagine the minute they found out that the parking wasn't adequate, they'd start making that move. That's an assumption on my part, but it's also, if they're not in the market to lose money, I don't suspect, and so I guess what I'm saying is, I hear a contingency plan, I hear their rationale for the way they're at. I think that we can raise these kind of concerns for a long time and hold up a project, or we can move forward and adjust as we go. And my sense is, let's move forward.
Yeah, I guess I'd be interested in knowing how many more parking spaces you could make in the changing from parallel to angular, just as, from the standpoint of knowing what additional capacity you might have in a reconfiguration.
Yeah, we could do an overlay when we've done this in other situations too, with similar concerns. Again, the 1.5 is something we're comfortable with, and if a lot of the ordinances are tending towards that way as a max right now anyway, the 2 per unit is becoming less and less. And again, it's being proven out, so it's not just because we think there is less of a need, there is a less of a need. But what we could do is an overlay that shows there's probably 5 areas that I just looked at as we were talking, that we could identify as potential areas to get more density of parking. As again, it's really, as you mentioned, more so that he can protect his ability to rent units. But I think, or they can protect their ability to rent units, but we could do that just as a, showing how many more spaces could be added if that needed to happen.
Yeah, I know that there are some instances where there's different safety outcomes from parallel and angled parking, and I hope that we keep our eye on not trying to jam cars into a spot where people run over each other for the sake of accommodating that. I was also just going to mention that that site is 8 minutes by Catabus to the Meridian Mall and 24 minutes to the center of MSU campus. That bus doesn't run very frequently, but it gets you there pretty much as fast as driving. And CATA also operates a shopping bus that circulates between shopping centers and large residential areas. So I think people do have options, and people who are renters by choice may also be transit and walkable by choice. So I think that's what we're looking for.
If this were more of a mixed use, more urban development, we'd probably be 1 space per unit or less. So that's even that situation, again, for the reasons you just mentioned, there's a little bit more accessibility even than this to transit or services.
This may seem like a silly question, but I can't help myself. What is the drive-through for?
Which one? There are two shown. The one on the corner is obviously for a user that might have the need, again, to give an example, a pharmacy may want a drive-through that's becoming more popular. For the existing building that will remain, we're looking at a coffee shop that might want to have or somebody that just wants a quick in and out.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Snyder.
I believe I asked about this last time you were here. The activity lawn, I think you talked about potentially there being some kind of a playground or something for children. Is that where that would be or not? Because I don't see it.
I think we're probably going to put a playground closer to where the spool will be.
Okay.
So we've got that area that's where we show the spool, and then the area just to the west of that, that's probably where the playground will go.
Okay. Is that something that you're pretty sure you're going to be installing? I'm just thinking about young professionals, but there are more single parents now, and like having a short distance to walk to with your kids is a very big deal.
Yeah, I think we're trying to Chad's point, we're trying to see what the mix is going to be, and we've got other things. One of the things that are showing on the plan now is just potential area for carports and potentially garages. Again, as we get residents, we'll understand what the mix is, and so we're trying to be a little flexible, but the idea is that we want amenities that are going to kind of be appealing to the residents and kind of keep them there. So if we get a lot of younger professionals that are going to potentially have children, then the playground will be put into the plan, whether it's on the north end or the activity lawn, but I think we're thinking it's going to be closer to Building I.
Thanks.
Quick question for staff. If we say, yeah, we agree to this, and they decide they want to make some major revisions, what would be the process for that?
We bring them back?
They'd have to come back.
Yeah,
Okay.
major amendment would trigger another
So if we
application.
approve this, then they're kind of locked into building it this way unless they come back to us and ask for an exception, which we would have to approve?
That is correct. This is the concept plan, and if they brought in a site plan that deviated from this significantly, we would call them out on that and make them come back.
Thank you.
That's similar to a question I was going to ask. Is the 6-year build-out program part of the approval process?
Yeah,
It is.
this would put them in that cycle.
Okay. So if they come back and say, economic conditions are not what we expected, we need 2 more years, that would require them to come back for a variance? Or
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I think, yeah. They're not meeting the expectation of the planning commission. They thought you're gonna have this done in 6 years. Now you're saying 9, 8, whatever. Let's go, maybe we gotta reevaluate. If they're doing that though,
they might be reevaluating the whole thing. It's gonna come back
You
anyway.
decide to do it in 5, you don't have to commit.
That's truth.
All right. Commissioner Trusise.
If the commission is through, I would make a motion to approve the resolution that
there a
is
second
presented
for
to
that?
us.
Second, Commissioner Primo. All right, all in favor of the motion?
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, roll call, that's right. All right, let's do that then. Commissioner McConnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Primo,
Yes.
Commissioner Cordell is not here, Commissioner Shrewsbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards.
So we don't have the option of getting more information. I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner, all right. Commissioner Trusise,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder, did I call you? I lost track.
My vote is yes. No, you did not call me.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, staff.
All right, so that closes item 8A. We're now on item 8B, text amendment for the DEX statute.
So, after the last meeting, there was a couple of questions that the commission asked me to follow up on. And I think, valid point, we do have definitions broadly on my dry erase board list that never seems to go down, only seems to go up. So certainly I think we need to address the decks, porches, patios, because right now under the ordinance, as I thought I was remembering correctly while I was standing here last time, it is all under sort of encroachments currently. The other piece that, in talking to Assistant Planner Chapman, who has handled multiple ones of these over the years, is that decks, apologies, decks are really the only request we get under this, because porches don't require a permit if they're flat to the ground. So if people are changing those in these PUD situations, we're not aware of it. And so it's being done without our authorization to begin with. So it's not necessary for us to address it. In fact, this would functionally, by making this change, make those all legal all of a sudden. So we have,
I brought it up.
just following up those answers, we've not made any changes to the text of the amendment. Be happy to discuss it further. We are still recommending at this time, except decks not to exceed 10% of the square footage of the principal structure to be a minor amendment.
Does the commission have any questions for staff on this? Is there any motion on the resolution?
I move to approve the resolution as presented.
Commissioner Trusise makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Snyder. We'll do a roll call. Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Shrewsbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Primo,
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Trusise.
Yes.
The chair votes yes.
Thank you very much. And like I said, you will probably see definitions, including decks, out of us shortly. It's moving up the list quickly.
Okay. All right, that closes out unfinished business. Other business, item 9. Is there any other business to discuss?
We have none this evening.
All right. So we are then on item 10, reports and announcements, Township Board update.
I will say that the Township Board has now adopted in totality the series of text amendments that the Planning Commission worked on at the beginning of the year. So those are all in place now, including having already diverted one ZBA case around the lake. But as we are finding, it is not a panacea. As I said, it is not a panacea. We have a request coming forward that's found a bit of a loophole in what we proposed. Because what we proposed was main structures, houses, and there are a couple spots where the garage is prominent and detached from the house, and so it does have an impact on that averaging setback requirement that we installed. So not a panacea, but is already helping. The Township Board has also had the initial review of the Bickford proposal, and that'll be going back to them for a final decision at upcoming meetings. Related topics, the township has voted to move forward with no more than $1.25 million for infrastructure costs as it relates to the Village of Okemos project. And they are considering the adoption of a commercial rehabilitation district for the support of the Hazlet Village project. Functionally, just by way of the discussion briefly here, the CRA, it will not, what'll happen is it will act like, it'll freeze their taxes for 10 years. So they will continue to pay taxes on at the current rate. And then in that 11th year, functionally what will happen is all of a sudden everyone will get a windfall because there'll be now a project that was built, and all the taxes will come into play then. So it's not any money out of the general fund. It's not any money out of the township's coffers. It's becoming more and more, it's becoming a more common way to do these redevelopment projects because we don't get into the complications of some of the other acts or direct funding from the EDCs or things like that. It's okay, well, we'll continue to take what we get now, and then 10 years from now, the township board at the time will have a great fun time with the new taxes that come in. So that is the consideration right now. No decision has been made, but that is what is under consideration at this time. That's really all I had from the township board update right now.
The board had planned to have a joint meeting with all the commissions. That was abruptly canceled. Do you know if they've planned a new date
They're
for
working
that?
on rescheduling that.
Are they? Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Snyder?
Well, similarly, but this kind of leads into liaison reports. I was curious when the next Transportation Commission meeting will be, because that was canceled. That one was canceled.
Abruptly as well.
Yes.
We are going to work on rescheduling that here in the next couple of days to get a date on the calendar. We are trying to coordinate the annual CATA report as well. So we're trying to, we had originally said, okay, we'll do that July?
Yeah.
July. And so now that we're trying to reschedule the May meeting, we're seeing if maybe we could slide their report up and combine forces. So we should have an answer on that very shortly.
Great.
Any other questions? All right, then. Thank you. That was item 10A. Item 10B, liaison reports. Are there any? No. Interesting. Okay. So we're now closing item 10. Item 11, project updates. 11A is 3560 Hewlett Road Planned Unit Development.
Yep, you'll see this at, I believe, your next meeting. The little tiny development across the street from the high school on Hewlett Road. It's the old farm. Proposing to maintain the existing farmhouse, for those that are wondering.
Any site plans received?
We got something in late this afternoon. I didn't, we were so crazy, I didn't get a chance to even see what it was. Church parking lot, I believe. Nothing of huge social and political import, but still very important.
And any site plans approved?
We've not approved anything lately.
All right. The record should reflect there are no members of the public present, so that closes out item 12. We are now on item 13, which is the adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Commissioner Primo moves to adjourn. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. I did.
Oh.